Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier, and thank you for taking time out of your day to stop by. I love this photograph from Old Pagetta, rainbow times savannah times zebra. And we went there a long time ago. I haven't been back there, but a couple of people have said they've really done it up and it's looking fabulous again. The markets are never wrong, President Paul Kagame said in an interview in Washington on August the 5th at the US-Africa Summit. There was no sharper signal delivered in Washington than those 5 words that President Kagame uttered. Picking up the signal through the noise of our world in 2014 is no easy thing. In fact, my view is the new normal is a very arrhythmic world. When I plugged arrhythmia into my computer, it threw up this. For years he'd been studying the phenomenon of chaos, of which an arrhythmic heartbeat was a perfect example. And it was His Excellency Johann Borgstein who told me that the signal announcing this new arrhythmic normal was the disappearance of MH370. I look forward to hosting Dennis McCory, who's the CEO of On Phone Media. He's 31 years old, very interesting gentleman, and well worth listening to. Mind Speakers, of course, held at the Intercontinental. We serve breakfast from 9:30, and our program starts at 10 a.m. That's this Saturday. It's an open forum, but if you care to come, do register on the site. It's free, so at least going forward I can contact you directly via email. We've had some great guests this year: Christine Lagarde, Dr. Naikuni, Charles Ireland, Dr. Richard Sesibera of the EAC, Munir Ahmed and Joshua Oigara. My home thoughts return to Adam Curtis, and I'll put up the link. We live on the desperate edge of now is one of his documentaries, and it really is very good. And then I like this picture, which comes from another of his documentaries, is that you can only trust the numbers. Returning to Scott Fitzgerald, he smiled understandingly, much more than understandingly. It was one of those rare smiles with a quality of eternal reassurance in it that you may come across 4 or 5 times in life. It faced or seemed to face the whole eternal world for an instant, and then concentrated on you with an irresistible prejudice in your favor. It understood you just as far as you wanted to be understood, believed in you as you would like to believe in yourself, and assured you that it had precisely the impression of you that at your best you hoped to convey. Isn't that beautiful? In his blue gardens, men and girls came and went like moths among the whisperings and the champagne and the stars. And finally, and as I sat there brooding on the old unknown world, I thought of Gatsby's wonder when he first picked out the green light at the end of Daisy's dock. He had come a long way to this blue lawn, and his dream must have seemed so close that he could hardly fail to grasp it. He did not know that it was already behind him, somewhere back in that vast obscurity beyond the city, where the dark fields of the Republic rolled on under the night. Gatsby believed in the green light, the orgiastic future that year by year recedes before us. It eluded us then, but that's no matter. Tomorrow we will run faster, stretch out our arms further, and one fine morning, and so we beat on, boats against the current, borne back ceaselessly into the past. I'll put up a photograph of Leonardo DiCaprio playing in The Great Gatsby, which I know was much maligned, but actually I think he's a tremendous actor, I really do. As the PRC strength waxes, this is at the end of an article in AC Times, and the US government sees its window of opportunity for effective rollback, inexorably closing in the South China Sea, I think something will happen sooner rather than later. And I wrote about this on the 2nd of December in that piece called "The Pivot to Asia Bears Its Fangs," when I said the US probably feels it holds a decisive hard power advantage at this moment, and given that the trajectory is one of gradual erosion of that decisive advantage, leads me to the view that this pivot to Asia has a logic and momentum of its own. Therefore, I see the US being increasingly determined to press its advantage. Put up a photograph of a B-52 Strato Fortress from Minnow Air Force Base as it flies over the Pacific Ocean. Islamic State militants have seized an airbase in Syria, dislodging forces loyal to President Bashar from their last stronghold in the northeastern Raqqa province. The Al-Qaeda breakaway group, which is also fighting government forces in Iraq, stormed the Tabqa airbase after battles that began last week, said the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, which monitors the daily developments of the civil war. The government moved its aircraft to other bases, it said. With the capture of the airbase, Raqqa becomes the first province fully outside Assad's control, further cementing the Islamic State's hold inside its self-declared state and allowing it to focus on the neighboring Aleppo province. The Syrian government sought to break its isolation, offering to cooperate with any US airstrikes against Islamic State militants inside Syria. This was via a press conference held by the Foreign Minister Walid al-Muallim, who said any strike without coordination would be an act of aggression, and that the Syrian government is ready to cooperate regionally and with the US and the UK. Fawaz Gersh says the airport's capture was a hard blow to the Syrian government. It increases the pressure on the regime tremendously at a time when the Syrian army is overextended as it fights fierce battles on several fronts, he said. The Syrian offer, this one that Walid Muallim made, came after Ben Rhodes, who I previously said is an extremely powerful figure, though his title might not appear so. He's the Deputy White House National Security Advisor, said on August 22nd that the US will consider airstrikes in Syria to combat the Islamic State. Al Jazeera is reporting that Obama has authorized spy flights over Syria. Privately, that Washington has no plans to seek consent from the Damascus regime for any military flights. Muallim, of course, says Syria is ready for cooperation and coordination. And I was listening to the radio, and I think the US is going to intervene as and when they choose without notifying the Syrian government in point of fact. However, there is a reshuffling of the deck, a realignment, and Assad has watched the ball spin full circle. And once again, he might well turn out to be able to position himself as an ally in the fight against terrorism, a position he held for many years. I was listening to the radio and I came across this concept of maneuver warfare doctrine. Someone was asked to describe why the IS was so successful. And then I went to look it up. According to the United States Marine Corps, one key concept of maneuver warfare is that maneuver is traditionally thought of as a spatial concept. That is, the use of maneuver to gain positional advantage. The US Marine concept of maneuver, however, is a warfighting philosophy that seeks to shatter the enemy's cohesion through a variety of rapid, focused, and unexpected actions which create a turbulent and rapidly deteriorating situation with which the enemy cannot cope. This is not to imply that firepower is unimportant. On the contrary, firepower is central to maneuver warfare, nor do we mean to imply that we will pass up the opportunity to physically destroy the enemy. We will concentrate fires and forces at decisive points to destroy enemy elements when the opportunity presents itself and when it fits our larger purposes. Reports coming out that ISIS beheading suspect is a 23-year-old rapper from London. The IS terrorist who horrified the world by beheading American journalist James Foley in an online video has been tentatively identified by British intelligence. The British security services MI5 and MI6 have identified the British member of the Islamic State jihadist organization who is suspected of murdering American journalist James Foley, according to the Sunday Times newspaper. The newspaper attributed the information to senior government sources. Sunday Times did not name the killer, saying that its sources gave no details of the man they have identified, though it did give the name of a person it described as a key suspect, hip-hop artist Abdelmajid Abdelbari. 23-year-old left his family's home in an upmarket London suburb last year, recently tweeted a picture of himself holding up a severed head. The gruesome video of Foley's beheading, which was released last week, featured a man with a London accent. The newspaper said that Barry is known to fellow fighters as Jihadi John. Correspondent Jennifer Griffin reported on Fox News Sunday that Jihadi John was active in London's rap scene before travelling to Syria last year to take up arms on behalf of ISIS. He also has family ties to Islamist terrorism. Barry used the pseudonyms El Jinny or Lyricist Jinn when he was involved in the London rap scene. I wrote about this, and what I found particularly unsettling was a very British accent. I said, and then of course the beheading of James Foley by a jihadist with a British accent went viral, and I think because it was spooky, because you're speaking to years of colonial history behind that. And the point is, he used to call himself Jinn or Jinny, and Jinn or Jinn or Jinny are supernatural creatures in Islamic mythology. They are mentioned frequently in the Quran and other Islamic texts and inhabit an unseen world in dimensions beyond the visible universe of humans. The Quran says that jinn are made of a smokeless and scorching fire, but are also physical in nature, being able to interfere physically with people and objects and likewise be acted upon. In Islamic theology, jinn are said to be creatures with free will, made from smokeless fire by Allah, as humans were made of clay, among other things, have free will, and Iblis abused this freedom in front of Allah by refusing to bow to Adam, when Allah ordered angels and jinn to do so. For disobeying Allah, Iblis was expelled from paradise and called shaitan. Jinn are frequently mentioned in the Quran. Prophets and messengers were sent to both communities, usually invisible to humans, but humans do appear clearly to jinn as they can possess them. Jinn have the power to travel large distances at extreme speeds and are thought to live in remote areas, mountains, seas, trees, and the air, in their own communities. So there you go, quite interesting what he's playing on. Arab nations strike in Libya, surprising the US. Twice in the last 7 days, Egypt and the United Arab Emirates have secretly launched airstrikes against Islamist allied militias battling for control of Tripoli, Libya, 4 senior American officials said. In a major escalation of a regional power struggle set off by the Arab Spring revolts, the United States, the officials said, was caught by surprise. Egypt and the Emirates, both close allies and military partners, acted without informing Washington, leaving the Obama administration on the sidelines. Egyptian officials explicitly denied to American diplomats that their military played any role in the operation. A raid against them and backing the Islamists are the rival states of Turkey and Qatar. Several officials said in recent days that United States diplomats were fuming about the airstrikes. We don't see this as constructive at all, said one American official. Egypt's Sisi, interestingly, is being reported in the Jerusalem Post as saying Qatar and Turkey are spending millions to spread chaos in Arab lands. And that takes me back to that sentence. For years he'd been studying the phenomenon of chaos, of which an arrhythmic heartbeat was a perfect example. I put up a photograph of the passenger terminal at Tripoli International Airport on Sunday. Also, refer you back to that piece I wrote in October 2011, Gaddafi's body in a freezer, what's the message? And I said the raw feed of the capture and then the death of the Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi and his son Mu'tasim Gaddafi raises plenty of questions. The bodies are currently lying side by side, bloodied and half naked, on a filthy mattress in a meat locker in Misrata. I am left thinking this dead Gaddafi business is one powerful message, and today Marshall McLuhan's prediction in the Gutenberg Galaxy that the new electronic interdependence recreates the world in the image of a global village has come to pass. The image of a bloodied Gaddafi, then of a dead Gaddafi in a meat locker, have flashed around the world via the mobile, YouTube and Twitter. Who's in charge of the messaging? Through the fog of real-time and raw footage, I note a very powerful message. The essence of that message being, don't F-U-C-K with me, because you will end up dead and a trophy souvenir in a fridge. I cannot help feeling that it is as elementary as that. Don't F-U-C-K with us, because you will end up dead and a trophy souvenir in a fridge. If you look at Libya post-Gaddafi, you look at Iraq post-Saddam, there's been no further thought given, really, as to what came next. I'll put up a photograph of Muammar Gaddafi I found in the Daily Mail, and another photo from phone footage off the internet shows the former Iraqi President Saddam Hussein with a noose around his neck prior to his execution in Baghdad, December 30, 2006. I'll put up a photograph of Marshall McLuhan, deep thinker, very seer, sort of poet-type character. Give you one sentence from that piece I wrote not too long ago about Ebola, saying viruses exhibit non-linear and exponential characteristics. Numbi, who's from the DRC, says, I declare an Ebola epidemic in the region of Gera in the territory of Bouende in the province of Equateur, of a different strand to the one in Sierra Leone and so forth. A total of 2,615 Ebola infections, 1,427 deaths have been recorded in the outbreak so far by Friday. Put up an image of La Menace Ebola, and also a Liberian doctor has died despite taking the experimental anti-Ebola drug ZMapp. Euro slightly above 132 at 132.03. Dollar index 82.48. Japanese yen 103.86. Snapped first gain in 7 trading sessions. Swissy 0.9144. Pound 165.92. Aussie 0.9295 below 93. India rupee 60.511. South Korean won 10.1734. The Real 228.60. Egyptian pound 7.1508 and South African rand 10.7018. The yen has weakened 0.8% in the past month, according to Bloomberg. Euro has fallen 0.5%. The dollar has advanced 1.4%. The Norwegian kroner is the best performing currency over this period. I'll put up a 3-month chart of the dollar index. I think there are risks that this is going to soar. And as I said over the weekend, if things tip big, the dollar might soar. History's message to currency investors is to buy the dollar 6 to 9 months before the Federal Reserve starts raising interest rates. That's the chart of the day from Bloomberg. I'll put that up. Euro dollar 132 and a little bit more. Draghi said last week investors' bets on euro area inflation exhibited significant declines at all horizons in August. Policymakers will use all the available instruments needed to ensure price stability over the medium term, he said in a speech at Jackson Hole. And clearly that's undercut the euro again. Commentators looking for 130 in the coming weeks and then 127.50. S&P crossed 2,000 for the first time. I'll put up a 5-year chart of the S&P, the Nasdaq and the Dow Jones for you to have a look at. Gold, a little bit stronger, 1280.435. I'll put up a 3-month chart looking for 1240. Crude oil last trading at $93.57. That's had a very, very poor run. I think that's oversold now. Now, coming to sub-Saharan Africa, President Xi Jinping, seen on the left, walks with Zimbabwe's President Robert Mugabe during a welcome ceremony outside the Great Hall of the People in Beijing. This is a photo from AP. Their meeting featured on China's main 7 p.m. news bulletin, showed Mr. Xi calling Mr. Mugabe a renowned leader of the African National Liberation Movement and an old friend of the Chinese people whom we respect very much. Mr. Xi said the traditional friendship between China and Zimbabwe was forged in the glorious years when we stood shoulder to shoulder against imperialism, colonialism and hegemony. The The Chinese people value friendship. We will never forget those good friends and good brothers who have shown mutual understanding and support vis-a-vis China and have come through thick and thin with us, he added. Martin Davis, the CEO of Frontier Advisory, told Bloomberg that Mr. Mugabe was seeking a last financial lifeline for his regime, but that he would be naive to assume that Chinese capital is as easy to get as it has been in previous years. Of course, Mugabe is now the chair of SADC and might well be the lead to lead the 54-nation African Union from next year. China invested £360 million in Zimbabwe in 2013 and has granted over £600 million in loans. China is ready to work hand in hand with Zimbabwe to lift our bilateral relations to a new high. But the Chinese ambassador, foreign investment into Zimbabwe plunged 59% to $67 million in the first half of this year, the central bank said. The Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe has also created a company that will buy non-performing debt from banks. South Sudan rivals sign new ceasefire deal, apparently. East Africa's regional IGAD bloc, which mediated the talks between President Salva Kiir and his deputy, Riek Machar, SAC deputy, called on the leaders to forge a unity government within 45 days. Well, we'll believe that one when we see it. I'll put up a photograph of Salva Kiir and Riek Machar. South African all-share is up 11.006% this year. Dollar rand at this 1070 level. 3-month high in this period has been 1030. We're towards the lower end of the trading range. Egyptian stock market, whilst falling 0.97% yesterday, remains at multi-year highs and is plus 38.646% this year. Nigerian all-share is at 2-month lows and is up only 10 points for the year. The leader of Nigeria's Islamist group Boko Haram said his fighters were now ruling the captured northeastern town of Gwoza by Islamic law in the first video to state a territorial claim in more than 5 years of violent insurrection. Abu Bakr Shekau's videoed speeches, often as chilling for a rambling incoherence as for any message they contain, have become a regular feature of the militant leader's bid to project himself as public enemy number one in Africa's biggest economy. In the latest video released through his network late on Sunday, the militant says he is fighting to create an Islamic state in Nigeria, said his forces were now in control of the hilly bordered town of Gwoza, near the frontier with Cameroon, after more than a week of fighting there. Allah has granted us success in Gwoza because we have risen to do Allah's work, Shekau says. Allah commands us to rule Gwoza by Islamic law. In fact, He commands us to rule the rest of the world, not only Nigeria, but now we have started. Put up a photograph of him and refer you back to that piece on the 22nd of April when I quoted Abu Bakr Shekau saying, "We're in your city," addressing Nigeria's President Goodluck Jonathan. And I said that comment could have been made by Al-Shabaab. Both Boko Haram and Al-Shabaab represent a risk, asymmetric risks. And, the potency of these asymmetric risks have ratcheted higher in 2014. Jonathan, bring back our army, says Abu Bakr Shekau. Watch this video. It's really quite surreal. Ghana Stock Exchange is at 7-month lows. It's up 2.657% this year. Somebody is setting up a wildlife WikiLeaks called Wild Leaks. Good luck to them. It's quite interesting. They're talking about a very interesting leak on a very powerful individual in Kenya linked to the government who's behind the ivory trade. This kind of person will never be taken out from within. They're too powerful. You need help from outside. So right now we're trying to gather more evidence, he said in a rapid-fire Italian accent and English. On that note, I'll put up a photograph of 2 male rhinos that I took when we were visiting Lewa. Rwanda sees lower bond yields and the biggest sale of 5-year debt. Rwanda is selling a record amount of 5-year local currency bonds. 15 billion francs of notes will pay a coupon of between 11.65% and 3-year security, and 5-year securities will pay 12.25%. And I said, Rwanda's debt is truly sought after. And I go back to that comment that President Mugabe said at the US-Africa Summit, the markets are never wrong. He was speaking bang on to his audience, and it is that audience that's getting in more and more interested in nibbling at his debt. Kenya's debut €2 billion bond pushed its total public debt to 57% of GDP at the end of June, up from 51.7% a year earlier. But debt as a percentage of GDP is expected to fall in late September, when the Statistics Office updates the base year for calculating output to 2009, which will result in the size of the economy going up. The overlay SIM has the potential to facilitate a man-in-the-middle attack. This is GSM. By observing, collecting, revealing sensitive data such as pins, ciphering, and integrity keys. This is the GSMA in an advisory note to the Communications Authority of Kenya. The SIM can also facilitate unauthorized access to the primary SIM card, change of configuration settings, and execution of actions without the explicit permission or knowledge of the mobile user, the GSMA says, adding that the technology can now allow recording and divulging of mobile user PIN details without the phone user's knowledge. So that's supportive of Safaricom. Kenya shilling was lost at 88.699. This is its lowest level since January 2012, and a Reuters report is saying there's also an element of panic buying. Nairobi All Share closed at 156.77. That's an all-time high. It's up 14.723% this year. Nairobi NSE 20, which is up 2.172%, and above 5,000. It's closed above 5,000 every session since August 5. Obviously, the shilling was under tremendous pressure yesterday. Hard currency receipts have surely slumped, I accept that. But the more than 10% retreat we've seen in the price of oil is going to significantly taper the dollar spend at the next round of oil buying. Volumes thinned out, clocked only 324 million yesterday, signaling sellers have been taken out of supply. That's a bullish signal. EGAD's rallied 7.14%. Standard Group released first half earnings. What I found interesting in those earnings was television was negative on the previous year, print up 12%, radio up 50%, digital up 82%, and that's been a theme across the board. Kenya Airways rebounded 1.621% after a very steep and overdone sell-off last week. Safaricom unchanged at 12.75. NIC Bank rallied 7.482% yesterday, and it's rallied 38.596% this month. Equity Bank, well traded, firmed 0.55%. Standard Chartered is trending higher. Kenol Kobel was the most actively traded share and has actually traded 5.28% of its shares in the last 3 trading sessions since releasing its first half results, which were significantly better than many expected. Crown Berger closed at a record. It's up 42.666%. Home Africa has rallied a total of 65.15% since closing at a post-listing low at the beginning of August. Once again, thank you for stopping by. I do appreciate it.